Hello, I'm Andrew and welcome to another video, and this week I'm going to talk a little bit about something that's happened recently for me, and that is a switch from a DSLR to a mirrorless system and my reasons why. It's quite big in the photography community at the moment. There's a lot of people switching and changing, and there's lots of debate about mirrorless and whether they can be used for professional photography. And I want to throw my 2 cents in, talk about the pros and cons as to why I've chosen this camera, the pros and cons of the camera, and what my personal opinion on mirrorless is, and where I think things are going, that kind of thing. So what did I do? I switched. I went from this, which is my Nikon D800, which has its battery grip on it, and that is pretty much, and our standard zoom, which is a 17 to 50 zoom, and that is pretty much my standard kit. That's the main thing that I use for the vast majority of what I shoot. And I've switched to this, which is the Olympus OMD EM5 Mark II. And again, this is probably it's about the equivalent of that. It's a micro four thirds sensor, so everything's doubled. This is a 12 to 40, which is equivalent of a 24 to 80 lens. In other words, standard zoom. And it's got similar field of view. So let's talk about pros and cons, because I'm not gonna quite frankly, I'm not gonna bullshit. I'm gonna tell you the good side and the bad, and why I've decided to change, and why I am over the moon with this camera, and why I will not be going back. So okay, there are some cons to this system. There are some things which aren't great. So let's do those first. Probably one of the big ones is battery life, and it was a worry switching over how much the battery life is going to be reduced. How many batteries am I going to go through? And on an average wedding, an average full wedding with this camera, I would get through about 1.5, nearly 2 batteries on a full day wedding. With this, I was worried about the battery life, but it turns out that I am getting through about nearly 2 to 2.5 on a full day's wedding. If it was a really long one, I may even get through 3 batteries. So it's an extra battery, not a big deal, but the battery life isn't as good. Simple as. Another probably can be slightly annoying, but it's just a case of changing the way you shoot, is the slow startup time. This is instant. You turn it on and it's there, and you can start shooting straight away. This takes about 3 seconds, 2 to 3 seconds for it to start up. So it can be a little bit annoying, but on an average wedding, for instance, it's pretty much on most of the time. So it's not a major problem. I have it set so that it does go to sleep to preserve battery life. And occasionally, if you leave it too long, you do need to just flick it off and back on again. But again, it's a very, very minor point to me personally. It doesn't majorly affect what I do, so not a big deal as far as I'm concerned. Another big one, which is again something that a few people have brought up when they've seen the camera, is, do you look professional? The perception of a mirrorless camera. Okay, good point. My personal opinion on that is that okay, yeah, some people may have a preconceived notion of what a professional uses, and they may look at that camera and go, that doesn't look professional. I don't see that personally. I think that the images should speak for themselves. It doesn't matter what a cook cooks their food on. If their food is great, you don't care, what it was cooked on. Should be the same for cameras, really. Whether it's a huge thing or a little thing, it shouldn't really matter. It's the images at the end of the day that count. So I suppose the difference is that you see this is out, it's in front of your face while you're taking pictures so people see it. But I mean, if anyone asks, it's a 2-minute conversation just to say, well, this is the new breed of camera, the mirrorless system, smaller, lighter, etc., etc. So again, not a major deal. It's more, other people's perceptions. I know what this camera is capable of. I know what it can do, and that's great for me. Dual card slots. This has 2 card slots in the side. This doesn't. This only has 1 card slot. I have shot, until I got this camera, I had shot for years on cameras with only 1 card slot. So again, it's not a major change, it's not a major problem. I'm used to shooting on only 1 card. As time goes on and more professional switch, I'm sure that will change and you'll start to get more professional features such as dual card slots in there. So, again, it's not a major problem, and it shouldn't really affect you. Just be careful. And I suppose one other thing is this is a micro four thirds camera, so the sensor is about half the size of the full frame sensor in here, which naturally leads to there being naturally more depth of field in the images, which means that you don't quite get that bokeh that you do on equivalent lenses. So this is a 2.8 lens, so is this. I get more kind of blurring in the background with this than I do with this, simply because of the size of the sensor. So that, there's not a lot you can do about that. It is micro four thirds. That said, I have shot with 1.8 lenses on this, and they have a great fall off, and they go to that really silky smooth bokeh at the back, and that's great. So put the right lenses on it, it's still good, it's still fine. So they're, to me, the cons that kind of spring to my mind. None of them are deal breakers as far as I'm concerned. So let's switch over to the pros and let's talk about the positives. There's 2 really big positives for me. Probably the biggest positive, as far as I'm concerned, is the weight of this thing. It is so light. It's unbelievable. It's, compared to this, thing, it is so easy to carry around. Now, it's probably the main reason I switched, because I have issues with my shoulders. It developed on this side and I switched over to this side as well. And I have difficulty carrying around heavy weights on my shoulders. And when I'm carrying a bag full of lenses and this round my neck for a full day on a wedding, that's an awful lot to carry around. So it became a big problem for me, and I needed to look at kind of doing something about it and switching to mirrorless. It was something that had been on my mind for a long time, but the health reason kind of came to the fore this year and really meant that I had to switch. I had to. There was no ifs or buts about it. I had to do it. So that's probably the number 1 reason and the biggest thing for me. The second huge reason for switching, and one of the big reasons I went for this particular camera, is the silent shutter on this. It's so quiet. It is just even naturally, actually, it is so quiet. It's untrue. So let's do a quick test of shutters, just so I can show you the difference. This is the D800 shutter, and this will be the normal shutter for the EM5. Now I'm going to also show you the silent shutter, but I'm going to start off by getting you to listen to the normal shutter. Very, very quiet. Okay, so let's try and get those two going side by side. So D800, EM5. Okay, huge difference there. This thing is so loud, especially in a quiet church. It's crazy. But this thing also has the silent shutter, which I will just navigate to. And so now I'm going to take a photo, and I'm going to turn the screen around so that you can see that I'm taking a picture. There you go. You can see I'm taking a picture. You can see the screen flashing each time, and it's silent. So, yeah, I mean, to me, that is, it's huge. To me, as a wedding photographer, someone that is wanting to be quiet, unobtrusive, to kind of disappear into the background. I've got to shoot in small, quiet ceremonies, in churches or civil ceremonies, and I have to be unobtrusive. This thing, clicking away at the front, is not unobtrusive. It is very, very noisy. This thing, just even on its normal shutter, it is so quiet that you just disappear. It's great. So I mean, so the weight and the silent thing, huge for me. Both of those huge. So let's run down the other pros. I've got loads of these. Price, so much cheaper. The body for this is just under £900. A body for just the body on this, again, you're probably looking about, when I bought it, what, £2,000, something like that. It's like double the price, and I'm getting as good quality. I mean, let's talk about that. It's not on my list. Image quality, great. Really, really nice images. I will get on to grain and whatnot later, but I mean, easily as good, easily. So yeah, go back to pricing. Lenses are cheap as well, so everything is just affordable, which is brilliant. Another pro, stabilization. It has in-body stabilization. The sensor in here floats in a kind of magnetic field, and rotates, moves to compensate for movement of the camera. So I can shoot at very long shutter speeds, and it's stable. It's totally stable, and that is great. And because it's in body, it doesn't matter what lens I put on there. Any lens can go on there, and it's fine. It's not a problem. Wi-Fi. Some people would say gimmick, and I probably myself, about a year ago, I probably would have said the same thing. I'm not bothered about Wi-Fi until I had it. Once I had it, all of a sudden, I could see the benefits of it, and it does have some pretty huge benefits. For instance, if I'm on a wedding, I can go through, during a break in the day, I can go through the images, find one I like. It allows you to process RAWs in camera, so I can process it to a JPEG in the camera, send it via Wi-Fi to my phone, and then upload that to Facebook, Instagram, whatever, and I can, tweet and post and Instagram, whatever, while I'm on a shoot. And in this day and age of social media, of marketing and promotion, and that kind of thing, that is big. It is, being able to do that. Okay, I mean, your more modern Nikons are, this is D800. It's it's a couple of years old now. This doesn't have Wi-Fi. The more modern ones do. But anyway, this has it, and that is big for me. Peaking. It has focus peaking, which is, again, it's great because I can manually focus with this camera, and I can see what's in focus, which is brilliant. And that leads on to the next thing, which is another plus, is I can use all my Nikon lenses with this camera. I just get one of my adapters, pop it on there, and I can put any Nikon lens on there. Okay, I don't get autofocus, but I've got peaking. I don't need autofocus. And it's actually really, really easy to focus with it, which is, again, great. Customization. I've got this pretty much set up buttons-wise, very similar to the buttons on this, with perhaps one or two exceptions, but basically I can customize all these buttons to pretty much whatever I want. So I've got peaking on this one, I've got ISO on this one, I've got just loads of stuff, but I can set these up to be whatever I want them to be. The level of customization in this is great. I can set it up so that it shoots how I want it to shoot. Grain in the images. I mentioned the image quality being as good as this, which it easily is. Now, a little bit of explanation needed for this, because this is a full frame camera. Its native image size is like 36 megapixel. I actually never used all those megapixels because every camera before this was a crop camera for me. So a bunch of my lenses, including this one and this one, are not full frame lenses. They're crop lenses. But this camera allows me to crop in, so I had it on a permanent crop, so all my lens ratios stayed the same. So I was actually always using this as a 15 megapixel camera. My previous camera was a 12 megapixel, and the one previous to that was a 10 megapixel. And I've never had an issue with kind of image size. This is actually a 16 megapixel, so I've actually jumped up a megapixel. So the images are very slightly bigger. But I mean, basically they're pretty much the same. So image size, not a major difference. Image quality, easily as good. The raw files are great. I've processed weddings and portrait shoots and boudoir shoots and all sorts with it now, and it's great. It's I have no issues with the image quality at all. And going back to the Pro I was talking about, the grain in those images is great. I've shot with it on very high ISOs, and the grain in these images, or the noise, should I say, in these images is actually more like film grain, which is why I put it down as grain. It's not really like noise at all. It's very filmic. It's very natural, and that's great. So they don't look, even on high ISOs with a fair amount of noise, it doesn't look bad. It looks like film grain. So again, that's great. And the final thing is lens range, which was part of the reason why I ended up going for this particular camera and make. Because I was also looking, I mean, another camera which was on my list was the Sony A7S. The ISO capability of that camera is massive, and they've just they're just releasing the new A7R Mark II, and the specs on that camera are amazing. I mean, that mirrorless camera is, you know, I've said it on about various things before, I'll say it again, that could be a game changer, you know, especially given that it can, you know, autofocus with Canon lenses, things like that. You know, the reasons for not switching are becoming less and less and less. The reason I didn't go for Sony in the end was a couple of reasons. Price. Sony are on the slightly more expensive end of the mirrorless market. But probably the biggest reason was lens choice, and the Sony lenses, for me personally, don't have the lens choice. They do have the kind of the core standard lenses, standard zooms and whatnot, but they're at f4 now. I want to be able to go down to 2.8. You know, I want that. Even with the A7S and its, you know, its excellent kind of ISO capability. I still would want to be able to go down to the likes of 2.8. So, and they're very, very expensive lenses, very expensive. So for me, the choice of lenses and the fact that some of those lenses, you know, I would have to buy an adapter just to use, because Sony has two different mounts depending on, it's got its mirrorless mount and its DSLR mount. You know, being able to, you know, needing a kind of adapter in order to use some of Sony's range of lenses, it was too much of a hassle for me. Whereas this, it's micro four thirds. I can use any Olympus lens, any micro four thirds lens with Olympus or Panasonic, or, you know, Sigma do a few. You know, doesn't matter. They all work. And the lens choice is great. I have a huge range of lenses that I can choose from, and my plan is to get some, you know, this is my lens range at the moment, but my plan is to certainly invest in some more lenses, you know, going forward. You know, probably going to get a few primes is next on my list. So yeah, that's to me, you know, that I've gone through my list there. So that's all the pros and cons that I can think of off the top of my head, and the pros far outweigh the cons, because you know, all of the negative points that I mentioned, none of them are really kind of deal breakers as far as I'm concerned. They're all, you know, they're all fine for me. You know, that I can live with it. To be honest, every camera has its downsides. There's not a camera which doesn't have, you know, problems with it. You know, even this, you know, had its issues. You know, all the Nikon cameras that I've had, you know, they've all had their little idiosyncrasies, and it's just a case of getting used to it. You know, I've made a switch from Nikon to Olympus, and there has been a learning curve with that. You know, I have had to learn a brand new system, a brand new menu, brand new camera, you know, all that. I've had to get to, you know, get to grips with that, and I probably still am, to be honest. I'm probably still getting used to it. But then I've been shooting with this, you know, Nikons for like 10 years, and they were pretty much a kind of extension of my arm. You know, I just knew how to use them. And this is becoming second nature to me as well, slowly and surely, as I use it more and more. It's becoming, you know, more and more second nature to me. And, you know, if I had to kind of, you know, break it down and, you know, give you a kind of final review, I would have to say, basically speaking, I'm thrilled. I'm really happy with this camera as my main camera now. The it's just the abilities of it, everything about it has blown me away. I think it's a great camera, and I have no issues kind of using this as a professional camera at all. It performs. It's as simple as that. It performs. Now, I mean, I've spoken with a lot of other professionals. Some have switched, some haven't, and it has to be said, I would say probably every single one that I've spoken to has expressed some interest in the mirrorless system. You know, even if it's just a passing interest, they've all kind of said, you know, it's nice and what it can do is really, really good. From that at the kind of that end right through to they look awesome, I'm really tempted to switch. And as time goes on, those reasons are becoming less and less and less. You know, there's less reasons not to switch and more reasons to switch. So I've rattled on for far too long. Hopefully that was of interest to you. So thank you very much for listening, and you know, there'll be more videos to come in the future. So thanks a lot, and I will see you on a future video. Cheers, bye. Fancy being awesome and becoming a patron? It's easy. Follow the link on the screen or in the description below to go to my Patreon page. Click on Become a Patron. On the next page, choose the amount you wish to pledge per composite image, and make sure you choose your reward level, such as the $1 thank you. Click on the confirmation button. On this page, you can then set your maximum monthly amount. So if you only want to spend $1, approximately 70 pence per month, put that in there. Choose your payment method and click pledge. It's really that easy. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.